Hello, girls. If you're investigating 19th and 20th century Australia, newspaper articles are a valuable primary source and they are readily available on Trove. Trove is a digital library that holds tens of thousands of digitised newspapers produced in the Australian colonies and in Federation Australia. That basically means that many photographs are taken of these newspaper articles and they're put into a computer library. This research activity on Padlet involves your use of Trove. So how about I take you through it? Let's imagine that the focus questions are: what were the working conditions like for female factory workers in early 20th century Australia? What were some of the social attitudes to female factory workers of the era? Let's begin by clicking onto the Trove link on Padlet. This is the search page. Now you've got a number of search boxes here, so let's think about the ones that would be most useful for us. All of these words, we could write female and factory worker. However, the phrase option, basically a phrase is a group of words, two words are a group of words, for instance, that goes side by side. And the phrase factory worker is one we'll put here. Okay, any of these words. I'm thinking we've got to capture the idea of female, but perhaps they might make reference to women or woman. So let's write in those words there. Search scope, search anywhere in the article. Yes, we want that. We don't want headings only searched, although that is one way of narrowing the search. You could try that just to get the newspaper article titles with maybe factory worker in them or factory. But for the purpose of this search, we'll stick with the first one. The publication date, all you do is write the year there and it takes you to the beginning of the year. I didn't have to worry about writing that month. So we're after the early 20th century, so let's take it through to 1920. Rather than searching all of Australia, let's go for the more advanced, technologically advanced states, which were New South Wales and Victoria. And then we run the search by hitting the green search box. The lot of the factory worker. Okay, in terms of the conditions experienced by female factory workers, this could be quite useful. The lot of the factory worker means their situation, their circumstances, what they have to put up with, any benefits. The report of the Royal Commissioner to inquire into the conditions of factory workers in Sydney and suburbs was issued last week. This is from 1912. That could be extremely interesting because it's going to go into a lot of detail. Okay, the factory worker, the making of Lancaster blinds, lead poisoning. I think Lancaster's in England. I probably won't look at that article. Shortage of female labour. Okay, that seems to be saying that the country needs, or the state needs, female factory workers. Positive attitude, perhaps. We'd have to read the article. Wanted female labour. Okay, something similar. Or is that article about New Zealand rather than Sydney? Again, you'd have to have a look and a think. Female labour in factories. Okay, that looks very useful. And just skimming this descriptive bit, there seems to be a Dr. W.E. Norris who has opinions about whether women should be working in factories. He talks about the physiological, that's physical aspect of factory work for females, and then he talks about someone not having sufficient stamina. That means energy. Okay, that might be an interesting one to look at. Now, before we select one of these articles, I just want to speak to you about sort by. Now, these have been sorted by relevance, and that's the default sorting. That means unless you change it, to sorting through date, earliest first or latest first, it will sort through relevance. So relevance would be that the phrase factory worker is repeated quite a lot in the article, and the most relevant article would have the word female or woman quite close to the phrase factory worker, probably in more than one place. Because we've selected our dates, it's really better for this search that we go for relevance. So let's see what Dr. W.E. Norris has to say if this is indeed a useful article in helping us to answer the question about social attitudes. Now, that's taking a little bit of time to load. That sometimes happens, so I had to hit it for the second time. Now, you'll see that the cursor has taken the form of a little hand, and I can move that article around, so I can push the article up in order to get to the bottom of it, and so on. Sometimes the articles go over 1, 2 or more columns. Sometimes they're quite short. Now, what you could do is take, if you find the article useful, you could take a screenshot. Over here on the left, Trove have used software in order to convert the digitised words into the kind of words that you could just copy and paste onto a doc. Often there are mistakes here, but of course it can be a very useful and easy way of grabbing a long relevant quote, sticking it onto some kind of doc, and then read it through. If there's a mistake, you just get the correction from over here and just fix it up where you've got the quote recorded. Now, let's have a little bit of a skim to see if this is relevant. Okay. The factory girl. It is not that it sets forth any particular new ideas. Makes reference to degradation. So there's some series on explorations in industry. So a number of articles that look at getting laws put into place to stop women being degraded. And it seems to be saying that the present factory system is degrading women. That is, it's not respecting their needs. Okay, so this, I'd have to read it through far more carefully, but it seems to be quite relevant to our focus question in that it's capturing some social attitudes towards women working in factories, and there are concerns being expressed. Okay. Now, the final thing I want to show you is how to capture the bibliographical details. So you hit the I for information where you get the details. You would copy the Harvard Australian citation. It's clear and useful because it starts with the date. You've got a bunch of articles, you can just line them up in date order, and you paste that onto your document at the top of your notes. So I've shown you the major points about Trove. I hope this is useful, girls. Actually, I'm going to show you just one thing that I've sometimes found useful. I think it might be out of view of this screencast that I'm making, but what you also can do is take the URL address for the search, so that you can just paste that. You seem to have a lot of good articles, so if you're interrupting your research, you can just paste that URL onto some kind of document and go back to it later. The other thing you can do is, say you're up to page 6. So if you copy and paste the URL address at the top of page 6, and put it onto some kind of doc. When you come back to it and use that URL address, it'll take you to page 6. That is useful, girls, in helping you to just keep on with the flow of your research, so that you know exactly where you're up to. So all the best. Have fun experimenting with different search terms and creating an understanding of the answers to those questions, to those focus questions. So all the best with that, girls.